great Hal Blaine. The tunes he recorded back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s are classic tunes. Over 6,000 songs. To describe this right now would take way too much time.
Anyway, it's a pleasure to be here, obviously. My goodness.
Great to have you.
It's wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you. Liberty sitting over here. Jimmy. Well, the Wrecking Crew, we were just several guys, myself, Glenn Campbell, Leon Russell, Lyle Ritz, Ray Pullman. Who else? There's 7 or 8 of us.
Was Tedesco in there?
Tommy Tedesco, of course. I could, jeez. All these wonderful players, and we were working little country joints all over Southern California. Glenn, of course, was a country player. Leon Russell was a country player. But they never knew that, except with the exception of Glenn, we were all graduates of music schools, universities, institutes. And we could read anything, and that's the way it was with us. And we used to work these places. The Wrecking Crew came about because we were doing a movie at Disney. And, you know, we used to do the demos for everybody. That's what the thing was. And in those days, the record business, there were song pluggers that they don't seem to have today. And they would come out, and they would have a song from a demo for Andy Williams, for Nat King Cole, for whoever, Frank Sinatra. And they would ask us to do these demos for the songwriting. People like Matt Dennis, Angel Eyes, and all these magnificent songs. And those were the days of pop. Goes the weasel. Those were the days of pop music as opposed to rock and roll music. And when rock came along, it was the same way. I mean, all these groups that had songs, they, you know, you heard so many of these things. They used to hire us. We became the guys that were making the demos so good. They said, hire these guys, because a lot of these drummers would not play rock and roll. I mean, the big name guys of that era. They were all great big band drummers, jazz drummers, group drummers. And they refused to play rock and roll. It's only going to be around here for 3 weeks, you know. Just terrible 3 chords, rotten, loud music, nobody in tune, guitar players. They had no idea. It's almost 60 years ago that all this stuff happened. Anyway, when we would play these, and it happened at the Disney studios. As a side note, I was working at Disney as an actor. Actually working in movies. I worked for Walt Disney. And when I got my first call for Elvis, they said, that was at Paramount, they said, no, we can't hire actors to play music. They said, no, he's really not an actor, he's a drummer. I said, no, he really is an actor, and he's with us. He's not with the American Federation of Musicians. There was a big fight. Well, what most people did not know is that Colonel Tom Parker, was a friend of mine, because he was managing another singer by the name of Tommy Sands in the 50s, and that's where I was introduced to that nasty word, rock and roll, thank God. And once Tom Parker said, no, he's a drummer, he's a fine drummer, Elvis will love him, just be sure that you get him. And that started me with Elvis for that particular situation.
First Elvis recording.
You know, they say that it was Can't Help Falling in Love, but I don't remember that being the very first one, because we did a lot of music, a lot of songs. And we did, it was from the movie Girls, Girls, Girls. And we were all chasing girls, girls, girls. All the guys. Well, in Hollywood, some of the girls were chasing girls too. But that's where it was. No big deal. I was talking to my husband about that just this morning. Anyway, you should get a ring, sit ringside because you have a great laugh. Anyway, we were doing this movie for Walt Disney. It was called Babes in Toyland. It was their first major musical movie that they did. And they had about a 70-piece orchestra, on the music stage at Disney. They hired our wrecking crew to come in at 12 noon. We were going to have 2 hours to do some music that this wonderful composer had put together. So we sat there. Now you must remember that the Disney Studios, just to paint you a little picture, the Disney Studios in Burbank it was an amazing place, obviously. You never saw a cigarette butt and everybody smoked. You never saw anything that was ripped out of the grass, or the flowers were, everything was perfect. Because they had people that did nothing but fix flowers and pick up cigarette butts and so forth. We walked into this studio, and these are all God-fearing, wonderful people that work for Mr. Disney. And the guys that were just leaving, well, the symphonic guys, I used to call them the Blue Blazers. They all had neckties. They were dressed beautifully. And everybody smoked. They all had their own ashtrays. They cleaned their own ashtrays. They never spoke between anything. Never heard a word. We came in, just us, before we were known as the Wrecking Crew, and we were wearing T-shirts and Levi's, long hair. We almost looked like Beatles, so to speak. And people, and I could hear some of the older guys, these wonderful symphonic musicians, they used to say things like, these kids are going to wreck the business. Look at them, the way they're dressed and everything. And they had no idea that we were all graduates. And we knew what music was about. And so this fellow, Mr. Bruner, wonderful young composer, when we sat down, he said, that other orchestra will be back. We have 2 hours to learn this spot. And it's all about a car. It had to be the movie Herbie the Car. And he said, we have a little section in the movie where some animals get out of a car and they rock and roll music to play kind of crazy. And we said, yeah, okay, sure, all right. We had been working everywhere, doing commercials, and movies, and television, and records. It was amazing. He's talking to us like we didn't know what he was talking about, but he was being very nice. He's saying, we got 2 hours, we'll let you guys rehearse it, and you can memorize it and learn it. There's over 100 bars of music. It was very fast, and it wasn't a very long spot. And there was a woman, elderly, nice lady, running the click track. He said, we're going to play a click track for you. It's a click track. We're going to play a click track for you, and it's nothing to worry about. He didn't know we've been working with click tracks every day. And it's just to get you from the beginning to the end of this movie spot, a little section of the movie. We're going to play it very slow so you can understand what you're doing, you can memorize it. We're saying, yeah, okay, sure, okay. So he told this woman, Evelyn or Shirley, whatever it is, Shirley, go ahead and play the slow click for them. Well, she accidentally hit whatever the click was, and as soon as we heard 5, 6, 7, 8, we're playing. We played this whole piece of music. And when it finished, the guy said, God, why didn't we make that? I wish we'd have made that. It was perfect, exactly what we wanted. And he said, how did you guys do that? And Tommy Tedesco, God bless him, one of the greatest guitar players in the world, he stood up like a little kid with his thumb in his mouth. He said, well, we practice a lot during the day, sir. And that was, I mean, we all broke up. And that became one of the by phrases for years, when we would do some amazing soundtrack or record, or, I mean, we would do MacArthur Park, those kind of records where there are lots of changes, the Fifth Dimension, where we were going from, segueing from one tempo to another, whatever. People could not get over that, so I automatically started calling us the Wrecking Crew. And we literally got so busy, we were going from, $100 a week musicians, working at rotten clubs with nobody listening, dancing, country guys throwing bottles of beer at you. I mean, all those stories are true. Glenn Campbell was the only guy that did not read music. He was from Delight, Arkansas. and played the wildest. He sounded like Jimi Hendrix, you know, he was incredible. But what we would do is when we got to a guitar solo, point to him, he would go nuts. He knew what the changes were. And when it was over, he'd just, come on, he would stop. And those were his amazing solos. And that's how he got really so famous. And he could sing, he sounded like anybody. Just amazing. So they started calling us the Wrecking Crew. I was with Count Basie, for crying out loud. What's the greatest band in the world you could play with for feel? And I learned as part of that laid-back thing that we used to talk about, Joe Osborne and I, Larry Nixon. They used to call us the Hollywood Golden Trio. We did so many records together, and unfortunately, Larry, may he rest in peace, he recently passed away. Unbelievable, what a loss. But it's because of all the years that we worked in clubs, we worked in bands. I worked behind strippers. Every night, there were at least a dozen strippers. They all had music. We were a trio. Piano, drums, trumpet, no bass. And some of these strippers, and a lot of them were very nice ladies. Some were not so nice, maybe. But they all used to come to me, I swear. They'd say, you know, you play my music, it's wonderful. You know, you really did some of the best accompaniment. And very early on in life, for me, I learned that I was a good accompanist. And what does accompanist mean? It means you're listening. If the drummer listens to the piano player, listens to the guitar player, listens to the bass player, the horns, the singer, and what is a song? The song is a story. Now, how are you going to hear the story if you're not listening? If the drummer's back there, the way guys are doing today, with Chinese crashes, with crashes from Yugoslavia, who knows where. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. It's wonderful. Drummers are all, we are all show-offs. There's no question about it. The thing you listen to is the biggest egomaniac, maniacal thing in the world. It still turns me on. I used to cry when I first used to hear that thing. It used to blow my mind. So I tell people, why was the Wrecking Crew so good? Because we used to listen. Ear. It's very, very important word, ear, because the thing that I learned, especially when you get in the studios, the most important word is ear. Because everywhere you went, people went, ear.
Set them up and knock them down.
But that really, the word ear is so important because every guy, when they get into sessions now, guitar players, drummers, anybody, rhythm section, horns, today they're wearing headsets. We didn't have headsets a lot in the beginning. We didn't have monitors in the beginning. You got to remember that when you're doing a record, for drummers, you don't need baseball bats. Today they got 20, 30 mics all over you. You could spit and it would sound like a bomb going off. So you learn that. I mean, I never used those kind of sticks. I used 7/8, basic, my Zildjians, all these years, and all my Zildjian cymbals, from day one, was always Zildjian. That was the Rolls Royce, period. Are you got it now? All right. Well, I heard somebody.
Wasn't it?
Could have gone the other way. It would have been embarrassing. I learned that from Buddy Hackett. I swear to God. He used to say, laugh it up, lady. I mean, you know, if you hold it in, it goes up and it stays and it goes around and comes out another way. And people walk away from you and they say, what did she do? But those are the things that are in your computer up here. Everything you learn is in that computer. And so you're learning. And so when we were thrown into, so to speak, the lion's den, we knew what to do. We were not kids just off the street because they were wearing Levi's t-shirts. And these t-shirts are from all over the world. You ever go to a NAMM show, everywhere you turn there's a new t-shirt. It's unbelievable. You know what it saves you buying clothes? And I think that's what made us so popular. And kids come to me all the time and say, what's the hardest part of being a studio musician? And that's a great question. And I tell them the hardest part is finding a parking space. Almost impossible. You gotta be there 2 hours early. You gotta set up your drums. And so what happened with me, I got Rick Fauché, the greatest drum tech in the world. I learned very quickly, thank God, and I'm knocking on wood, I learned very quickly that the union really was my friend. A lot of guys say, I don't want to play the union, I don't want to read music. It hurts my soul. Well, that's all BS, that's all there is to it. If you learn to read music, you will be an accomplished musician. If you're a member of the musicians union, every time you do a date, there's a little check that goes next to your name, and someday there will be a big check coming to you because it's your pension plan. And especially in California and all over the world, the big D we refer to as divorce. And you know, you work 30, 35 years, your whole life, for what you want, the toys, the good life, the days of wine and roses. Anyway, if it wasn't for my union pension today, I'd probably be homeless, because I have one of the biggest pensions. But that's because I was one of the busiest guys. It's one of those things, when you're dedicated, you love what you do, it's not work, you're playing the music that you want to play all your life. I don't care if it's rock and roll or rock and roll Tchaikovsky. You know, I've done symphonies from the Boston Symphony all the way to LA Philharmonic. I was working with a kid by the name of Mason Williams. He did a record called Classical Gas. He does a bluegrass symphony that standing ovations you would not believe. The people go crazy. And when we first walk in, all of these classical musicians are looking down their noses at us. And who are these kids with Levi's? And they play mandolins and fiddles. They don't play violin, they play fiddle. Well, we were playing the wildest bluegrass music. But once they knew who we were and how we rehearsed some of these, and he's got some incredible charts, Mason Williams, and he charges a lot too. But it was just amazing once they knew who we were. Now they're all around us. Hey, how do you get in the studios? Man, I'd love to come to LA, and I'd love to do this, I'd love to do that. I'd say, it's what you're doing. You practice, that's all. The drummers used to say to me, what's so special about rock and roll? I mean, how do you do it? I'd like to watch you sing it. I said, it's just a backbeat. That's all it is. Your backbeat on 2 and 4. Although you gotta remember, you gotta listen to each other, and you play together, so to speak.
Al, in the remaining 5 minutes we have of your time.
That's all, I'm out of here.
The bands, Carpenters, you know, a story about any one of those that's on the top of your head that
Well, the Carpenters, okay, I walked into the Carpenters, they were on A&M. Herb Alpert was one of the owners, Alpert Moss, Jerry Moss, that I used to call Blackie Carbon, because he used to wear this great big black overcoat all the time, Jerry Moss, before he got into horse racing and winning the Kentucky Derby. When they sold A&M Records, they sold it for what was $660 million. They each wound up with $330-something million. And now they had foundations, and they gave me a grant, I can't believe, A&M Records, and I was Herb's drummer. Anyway, Herb Alpert had signed the Carpenters. Now, maybe a year and a half before that, I was doing it with one of your New York guys, with Neil Diamond. We were doing a record at Sound Recorders in Hollywood, and with Joe Osborne, Larry Neckel on piano. We were called the Golden Trio. And Joe Osborne, at one point, we took a 5, and Joe said, Hal, come out, I want you to meet some kids. And I walked out. There were 2 kids. They were a little bit chubby. They were wearing kind of Western fringe clothes, cowboy boots. You know, he said, I want you to meet Karen and Richard Carpenter. Oh, nice to meet you guys. You know, whatever. And Joe said, these are the kids I've been recording in my garage with my little studio. I said, oh, great, I hear you're really wonderful. I said, And I said, what do you play? She said, I play the drums. And I said, what do you play? She said, I play the organ. And they each had a little bit of a lisp when they spoke. I play the organ. Oh, I said, great. So in a few minutes, Mr. Steiner was calling me, let's go, guys, we got it, okay? Nice meeting you all, thank you, goodbye. And Joe says to me, Hal, you got to produce these kids. These kids are fantastic. My drummer, HAL BLAINE, and I want to get Joe Osborne on bass, that you've been working with, comfortable with, and Rich will be on piano. So we sit down to do the first song. I'm not keeping you up, am I? She's falling asleep back there. No, beautiful lady back there, falling asleep. And all of a sudden we sit and we listen to the demo, and I think it was a great song, nice kid, good friend. Paul Williams, thank you very much. Get his name so he gets some cookies. And so we sit down. Now we had already done a commercial. It was a bank commercial on We've Only Just Begun, I think. Or Close to You, maybe, whatever it was. We've Only Just Begun. That was the bank commercial, it was Paul Williams. But Close to You, I think, was also Paul Williams. And then we listened to the intro, ting, ting, ka-ting, 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 ting, ting, ka-ting, ting, ka-ting. Why do birds falling from the sky, whatever. And so now, I counted off, 2, 3, and Richard is on the piano. And he goes, ding, 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 ding. And she starts saying, why aren't you a bird? I said, wait a minute, guys, please. I don't mean to stick my nose into this thing. But first of all, Richard, which tempo are we going to do this? Playing. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, Rich, you don't realize you're kind of rushing it a little bit. I used the word lightly. The piano, he was an amazing arranger and pianist. But a lot of those guys that used to work alone in clubs, they don't seem to have time. You know, you hear a lot of these lounge pianists. They play great, but they don't know what a tempo is. So anyway, he said, try it again, let's try it again. Okay, it was the same, ding, 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 ding. I said, stop. Now, the Carpenters' parents are sitting there. They're from New Britain, Connecticut, lovely people. And they're upset because this drummer, who was completely foreign to them, and this woman said, I've seen drummers on television for years. Karen is as good as any of them. I said, I have nothing against Karen. Nothing whatsoever. I love Karen. I know she's a great singer, but she's singing in a wrong key. She's singing way up here. I said, we don't talk way up here. We don't talk way down there. We talk mid-range. We talk where you're comfortable, where you speak. That's where people listen to you. Now, if you're going to sing everything, it's impossible. And so, with Richard, I said, put on a click track, learn to click track. No, we don't want to be robotic. It's like robots playing with a click track. I said, it's nothing to do with it. A click track is only a guide to keep you. If you're listening to the click track, you feel you get a little ahead, you back out a little bit, you come back to it. It'll always sound perfect. They were against it. But finally they said, okay. We did it with a click track. They wanted every record done with the click track. They really got hooked. Karen, excuse me, Mike. Karen, they brought her keys down, 2, 3, 4 keys. Now she was singing natural. Everyone knows that Karen Carpenter's son was magnificent. Richard wrote his buns off. He was a wonderful arranger. Did all those background vocals that the Carpenters do. It was a great group. They were wonderful people. So the Carpenters it really was an offshoot that started with Herb. And Herb, I must tell you, Herb Alpert Foundation, they give millions and millions of dollars to people. You'll get it pretty soon, it's coming to you. I said, oh, great. Well, months went by, I never heard a thing. I thought, is the old joke, the check is in the mail? Or is there not a check? Am I getting a cup of coffee? Am I getting a gift certificate to Macy's? I don't know what it is. So I called his brother, Dave, helper, one of my dear friends from years ago, also a drummer. He's the head of everything there. Naturally, it's his brother's Herb. So I said, Dave, I don't want to bug you, but I didn't want to ask Herb. Herb tells me that you guys have a grant for it. I said, yeah, it's wonderful. I said, well, it's been, 3-4 months, I haven't heard a thing. He said, you didn't get the plaque yet? We sent a plaque with your name on it. I said, oh, that's wonderful, I haven't seen it, I haven't gotten it. So he said, we've got a chair with your name on the back of it at the music school. That's your grant. A chair with your name on the back. I said, all right. I said, Dave, thanks so much. I didn't want to say, go jump off the bridge, But thanks, I appreciate it. Never got the plaque. I've never seen the chair.